Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Let's Paint a Mini. So today what we're looking at right now is Sajan, the iconic monk miniature from the Pathfinder Bones minis. His part number is 89018 if you wanted to look up the mini and purchase him yourself. And what we're going to be doing today actually is we're going to be doing something kind of fun here. So we're going to not only paint Sajan, but we're going to paint him to look like another character from a completely unrelated thing. We're going to paint him to look like Quan Chi from Mortal Kombat. For various reasons, basically, he has just always been seen as my favorite character. Whoa, my paint blob kind of got stuck there. A whole lot came out, and that's okay. But Quan Chi has always been kind of my favorite, and I figured we would do a miniature to make him look like Quan Chi. Another thing that we're doing today is we're actually using Reaper brand brushes. I already took this one out of the package, but this is the Reaper small brush. It's the 3 scale. It's this guy right here. So we're going to be using some brushes to give out more of an actual shout out to Reaper Mini. So the first thing that we're going to do actually, and I will display the colors at the bottom of the screen, or will have done that earlier rather. I'm using this grass green color here. And the first thing that we're going to do, actually, is his sword. Or rather, his scythe, sickle, I'm not sure what it is. The reason why we're doing this green color is because if you look at gameplay footage of Quan Chi from the most recent Mortal Kombat game, he doesn't use any weapons himself, but he will occasionally sort of summon weapons from, you know, necromantic power sources. They're these sort of bright green glowing weapons, and that's what we're going to do here. Now here you do actually want to be careful not to get any of this green paint onto his fingers or onto his hand or his cuffs on his whatever those clothes, those sleeves. So just make sure that you're careful and you just take your time, which is what I always say. Just take your time and you'll be okay. Alright, and after you get that that grass green color in there, we're going to go to our pale green, and we're going to dry brush over that grass green with this pale green color. I also bought from Reaper Miniatures, or no, this wasn't from Reaper, I'm sorry. This was actually from Citadel. This is a Citadel dry brush. It's a little bit different, but we're actually going to use this instead of those brushes that we were normally using. The thing with dry brushing is that you want to have such a little amount of paint on the brush, barely any paint at all. I mean, as you can see on there, it's on there, but barely at all. And you just want to go over the whole thing here, or rather the whole sword, or sickle, or I don't even know what that thing is. By the way, sorry if you can hear in the background my dryer. Had to do some laundry before I go into work today. And you might hear some clanking around of my clothes in the dryer, so sorry about that. Alright, and I think that's a pretty good, right there, so we're just going to leave that way. Oh, you know what? I put my water away. Let me grab that. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Just needed to get a glass of water to rinse off my brushes with. Okay, so after we get the sword on there, the next thing that we're going to do is the skin tone. So Quan Chi actually has very, very pale white skin. I've actually already got a little bit of gray out here, but this is rainy gray. It's faded off on the bottle here, but this is rainy gray. It's more Reaper paints, and we're just going to go over the entire skin tone. he's got these sort of little, I don't know, these sort of cross belts going across his chest there. If you do want to, I'm going around them with this gray color, but if you want to go over them, go ahead and do that, because it's pretty easy to just go over those later with black, because we are going to leave them black. But it will be easy to go over them with black later if you want to do that. But I'm just going to go around it. So you might be wondering right now, why Quan Chi? That is to say, I guess, why is Quan Chi my favorite Mortal Kombat character? Well, that is a good question. So when the most recent game came out, Mortal Kombat X, or 10, or whatever you want to call it, my buddy Ryan is really into fighting games as a whole, and so he got the new Mortal Kombat game when it came out, and you know, we were playing around with it for quite a while because I was living with him at the time. We were roommates, and he you know, he played it a lot. So anyway, we were just kind of playing around with it, and while I was playing it on my own, you know, I was playing with different characters. I wasn't very good at it at the time. Gotten a little bit better with it since then, but he was talking about characters that he liked and characters that he didn't like, and he mentioned that there were some characters that were just really bad, that were just really difficult to use, and just nobody really used them. And Quan Chi was one of them, apparently, at least. And so I remember trying to play with him at the time, and I thought, oh yeah, he's really weird. His combos didn't really make sense to me, and I didn't really like him. But I kind of decided when I was just playing the game by myself, because I had like the weekend off, basically, or just the afternoon, rather. I figured, you know what, I'm going to try to get good with a character that nobody really understands and nobody really gets good with, because on the online matches that I saw, yeah, pretty much nobody ever played Quan Chi. So I thought, I'm going to use a character that nobody is really used to and nobody knows all the moves to, and I'm going to learn that character. And so I did. So I just spent a lot of time learning Quan Chi's goofy combos and all that good stuff. And then as I was learning them, and as I was kind of figuring out the shtick of the character, I kind of learned to like him a lot. I really like his Warlock variant, the one where he uses portals in combat quite a bit. Something about that just seemed really cool and really fun. And I really liked all of his abilities, too, that used mind control and that kind of thing. I just thought that was really cool. He struck me, as I finally learned everything about him, as this like really cool evil monk sorcerer. And I thought, wow, this guy's actually a lot of fun. So he kind of became my jam. Quan Chi is definitely my favorite now. He's, in terms of his overall shtick, I guess it just appeals to me. Well, it's no secret that I love Doom quite a bit. And just the sort of evil, demonic sort of feel of the character kind of reminds me of Doom a little bit more than a lot of the other characters. So yeah, Quan Chi is my jam. It started off as just a way to be like, I want to get good at this game, and a way to do that is to get good with a character that nobody understands, but then it turned into, wow, you know what, I actually really like this character. So yeah, that's why Quan Chi. So another thing was that I saw Wonder Woman over the weekend. I saw it with my fiance Riley and with my dad and my stepmom. and it's pretty good. I definitely think that it is up there with the DC cinematic movies. I definitely think that it's a lot better than Suicide Squad. Never saw Man of Steel, so I can't really compare it. It's very different from Batman vs Superman, but I would say that it is objectively a little bit better, at least. I think that my general consensus of it is that I think that kind of DC finally just sort of fessed up and said, "All right, you know what? Let's just emulate the Marvel movies," and that's kind of what they did, which is fine. That's definitely not a bad thing. They focused on the main character and the supporting characters. They didn't really put a lot of focus on the villains, but when you do that, you get to characterize your leads a lot more. That's kind of the formula that Marvel ran into, and that's what they've been kind of doing with all their movies ever since. They were able to characterize a little bit occasionally, like with Loki, but for the most part, they just kind of focus on the villains. It's a really simple premise, and the origin story was really quick, but it worked well enough. It was fine. But then, like the third act, it kind of falls into the sort of generic superhero movie kind of pitfalls where that ending battle, I guess you could call it, just kind of stops making sense. It doesn't. It's not very appealing. It's not quite as exciting as any of the action beats earlier in the movie. But it's still okay. It's still fun, and overall the movie was still very good. So yeah, it's enjoyable. Wonder Woman is pretty good. If you're interested in seeing it, I would say go see it. I think that it's up there with most of the other mainstream Marvel movies right now, which is fine. It's definitely good enough. Okay, now when you're going over his head here, when you're going over his head here, make sure you don't paint around his eyes or his mouth. You want to try to get into some details here. But if you're using this brush, you should be in good shape, because this is a pretty good brush. Alright, that's pretty much it for that, although we still got those hands to do. And I'm going to get a little bit more paint out onto my little plastic thing here. By the way, do make sure that you use a plastic surface for when you are getting paint out, because if you do use a paper surface, that is to say, you know, either a sheet of paper or a paper towel or something like that, it tends to absorb the paint, and that's something that you want to avoid. Now here you want to be super careful, so here we're going to be going over the fingers that are covering the sword, and make sure that you don't get any paint over that green sword that you already did. But again, if you're using this brush, and if you're careful and take your time, then you should be in good shape. I always tell people too, if you know, if you're having trouble holding your hands steady or anything like that, just you know, rest your hands on the corner of a table or a desk or something like that, and that will help to steady your hands tremendously. That's it's very helpful for when you're wanting to do these fine details. Now, one thing that I will say is helpful if you are really wanting to do this and you're serious about getting your details and all that, don't bother with the bones version of this mini. Get the pewter version, because the detail is much better. Like this hand here, I'm just looking at it, and this hand is kind of, I don't know, lumpy, not super detailed, and I think that's just because of the plastic. Which, you know, is inevitable if you're going to be getting, you know, a cheaper sculpt. The Bones Minis are, you know, they're still very nice. I still like them, but they are definitely cheap or more cheaply made. You know, this mini is only, you know, $2 or $3 as opposed to the pewter version, which is, you know, $6 or $7. So it's about half the price. if a little bit less than that even. But yeah, you are gonna see some details kind of get a little bit muddied. But but like I said, it still looks good. So I still like the Bones minis. Just you know, if you are really serious about really wanting them to look super good, then I would say you know, get the pewter minis. Okay, and I think that's it for that. So we've got the skin tone there. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over all the black articles of clothing that he's got here with actually the same color, the same rainy gray. So this is why we're going right into this, is because we've already got the paint out. So you're going to be taking your small dry brush, your Citadel here small dry brush. Okay. And again, get most of the paint off. You don't need very much, and then just got a little dog fuzz on my brush there. Okay, so, and you just want to go over all of the black clothes, and obviously you don't need to worry about, you know, getting onto the skin or anything like that, because you just went over the skin with this color. So that's another reason why you want to just go right into this. But yeah, you don't just want to leave the clothes as black, because then they're just going to stay that sort of flat black color. But if you go over them with this gray, that's going to give them a little bit of depth, and it's going to make them kind of pop out a little bit more. So yeah, Quan Chi, he wears all black, and then depending on the costume variations and depending on the style variations that you choose, he might have some black or some red trim. We're gonna save those. We're just gonna leave it as black here, and I think that the details that we have are gonna make him look enough like Quan Chi that it's not really gonna matter. And I think that's pretty much it. We've got all the black all dry brushed there. So let's move on to dry brushing the skin tone. Alright, so we're going to move on to our pure white color here. Again, this bottle is faded off, but this is pure white. And we're just going to get a little bit of paint onto our little plastic surface here. Let's get a little bit more than that. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. And you know what, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, let's start with the eyes. Now, another Reaper brush that I bought here was this one here. This is another Reaper brush, but this is your itty bitty micro detailed brush. Very, very itty bitty. So we're gonna move on to this bad boy. All right, and let's get those eyes. Now, again, be super careful. Rest your hands on the corner of a desk or a coffee table or something like that, and you don't need very much paint at all. You need barely any. You just get a little tiny drop onto your brush there. Okay. And then we're going to go over to the eyes here, and we're just going to put some nice little dots right there. That looks okay. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Sometimes I hold it upside down because it's easier for me to come into the side of a mini from the right side than it is from the left side, just because I'm right-handed. And depending on whether you're left or right-handed, that might be easier or harder for you. So just keep that in mind. If it's easier to come at a mini from the left or the right side, just kind of do that. All right, so that's it for the eyes. That was the tricky part. But while we've got this white paint out, yeah, like I said, we're going to move on to the skin detail. So we're going to go back to our dry brush here. Get just a little bit of paint on there. Not very much. Yeah, very, very little paint. See, barely any at all. Okay. Now this you kind of want to start being careful. So you just want to go over the skin details, but try to avoid going over the black, because you do want to keep those as dark as possible. That might be kind of tricky, but just take your time. He's got very, very defined abs here, so rather than going across the abs, let's go horizontally across them vertically across them rather, not horizontally across them, and that way that'll help keep each sort of ab defined. Tell you what, I'm actually going to be not super concerned about going over those little cross lines I was talking about earlier. And I think I am just going to go over those with black later on, and that way that'll just kind of help to set those apart. Because it is kind of tricky getting into, each sort of section that is separated by those pieces. It's a little tricky to do that. So that's no problem actually. We'll just go over those later on, like I said, with some more black. That'll be fine. But yeah, Quan Chi is ghostly pale. I don't know why. It's just something that's just kind of a design, I guess. I don't know. I think honestly, it's probably this sort of Mortal Kombat developers sort of homage to sort of black metal, sort of Norwegian death metal, where they've all got the pale makeup with the sort of black eyeliner and that kind of thing. And that's kind of what Quan Chi is. I mean, when I first saw him, I thought that guy belongs in a Norwegian death metal band. Maybe that's another reason why I like him, because I used to be way more into that kind of music, the just sort of really intense death metal music, and I've kind of mellowed out a little bit since then, but I still like that music. And let's just go over the fingers, over that sword there. Now, this is going to get kind of tricky, just be careful. Because again, you don't want to get any kind of white paint over the actual sort of sword, but just be careful when you're going over the fingers here. If you get a little bit on the cuff of his sleeve there, that's not a super big deal. That won't stand out as much, but if you get white over the sword, that will stand out a lot more. So if you have to compromise by getting your brush to go onto the sleeve a little bit, don't worry about that. Just try not to get any white on the actual sword. Another thing that you can do too, actually, because, spoiler, guys, I've actually done this before. I've painted this exact mini to look like Quan Chi before, and what I've done is I've actually just cut off that hand and replaced it with just a sort of open hand, and that way it looked more like a sort of just martial artist. What I'll do too, I might even show you the comparisons of them side by side to just kind of show you, what each one looks like. Okay, so after we've got that part down, let's go over the base actually. That's another thing that I'm doing differently about this video than I have with others. I've actually left the base on there. I've in all of my other ones, I've cut off the base and I've put them on my own sort of minimalist black base. So I look at that base right there, and that just kind of looks like dirt with a little bit of with some rocks kind of scattered across it. So we're gonna go over that base with this muddy brown color. Tell you what though, because I am kind of missing my old brushes, I'm going to go back to my Master's Touch brush here, this 12-0. It's just a little bit bigger so I can kind of spread the surface area a little bit faster. So we're just going to go over, let's just go over the entire base with this brown color, and then we'll worry about those rocks individually when we get there. So another thing that's coming out this weekend is that new Mummy movie with Tom Cruise. I was talking to some friends about that, and I was like, "So you're gonna go see that new Mummy movie?" And it's funny. I think a lot of people are feeling the same sort of way, and that's that. I don't know if I really care that much because the Brendan Fraser movies sure have a special place in my heart. I think a lot of people are basically saying that, and I'm kind of part of that too. Riley and I actually just recently watched those first two Mummy movies again, and they really are a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, I like Tom Cruise. I do. I do think that he's good at his job. He really is. He's really good at making those big budget special effects stunt driven movies. He's very good at that. But I don't know, just like I said, the Mummy movies just have a special place in a lot of people's hearts. And if they wanted to move on to like younger cast members to kind of carry on and start a new generation, then that would be another thing. But instead, they're just kind of relying on a guy who's already been established in Hollywood for a long time, and it doesn't really look like anything particularly new or exciting. No, I don't know. They could honestly, I still think that it will be a very entertaining movie. I do, but I think there are a lot of people who are just kind of upset because they wanted something different out of it, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know if I'm going to see it this weekend or even in theaters at all, but if I do see it, I'll let you guys know. But if anybody else saw Wonder Woman, and feel free to chime in on what you guys thought of that. I thought it was okay. I mean, like I said, I think that it had the same sort of generic flaws that all of the other Marvel movies had, which, are admittedly still flaws, but I think that most people are just forgiving of those at this point. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought. Okay, so we've got that muddy brown color down. It looks like it's still a little bit wet, so I'm going to let that dry for a little bit. Let's see here. Hey, tell you what. You know what? While we're waiting on that to dry, let's do what we were talking about and go over those little straps with that black color again. So let's just get out our pure black here again. Don't need very much. Just get a little tiny dot. Okay. All right. We'll move back onto this small Reaper brush. Don't need it to be super detailed. Okay, there we go. That just kind of defines those straps a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Okay. So after that's done there, we're going to move on to this earth brown color, okay? And we're going to dry brush the base with this earth brown. It's just a little bit lighter than that muddy brown color, so it'll kind of stand out just a little tiny bit. And you know what, though? Now that I'm looking at this, I don't think that it stands out quite enough. It just doesn't look quite that different. So let's actually go a little bit lighter than that. Let's move on. Let's try this leather brown color instead. So you know what? I'm going to pretend like I never even used that earth brown color, and I'm not even going to put it at the color slide at the beginning of the video. So let's use this leather brown color, and let's see if that makes a little bit of a difference. Yeah, there we go. Now we've got the little kind of dirt particles showing up there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, there we go. That gives it more of a sort of earthy, sort of dirt path kind of look to it there. So that looks pretty good. All right. Oh, you know what? While I'm thinking about it, let's use that black color that we were using again. Let's go back to our little itty bitty micro detailed brush here, okay? And let's get brave. Let's get brave. So we're gonna use that black paint that we got out earlier, and we're just gonna paint little pupils onto his eyes there. Again, super careful. Just balance your hands, or not balance, but lean your hands onto a table or something like that. Let's just make them look straight ahead. There we go. That looks pretty good. It looks nice and menacing there. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I just thought about that. Okay, I'm glad that I got it while that black paint was still wet. That get kind of tricky if that can get kind of tricky if the paint is kind of dry. So let's get out a little bit more of this rainy gray here. Put that right there. And now let's go over those little tiny rocks. We're not going to bother dry brushing those, I don't think. But yeah, we'll just keep them that gray color. But yeah, let's go back to our regular small brush here. And there are just a bunch of little tiny rocks at the base here, and let's just go over those. There we go. Alright, so now we just got some little rocks just kind of sprinkled all over the base there, and that'll look pretty good. That's fine. Okay. And honestly, I think we're almost done, kind of. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to use our matte varnish. That's this thing right here, this varnish color. And we're going to go over the whole mini like that. Now, I do say, make sure that you use this varnish on any Bones mini that you have, because the really, really soft plastic... Oh, cats are being destructive over there. Alright, the really soft plastic... can bend and make different shapes and all that, and it's easy for the paint to come off. But if you put this varnish over it, that just kind of makes it harder for the paint to come off, and it also just kind of brings the color together and everything like that. So let's just go over the whole thing here with this matte varnish. By the way, I am just using a really, really old kind of nasty brush here that just kind of has the bristles all split out. Yeah, you kind of want to use an old brush whenever you do the varnish like this, because you don't need to do any details or anything like that. And the varnish can mess up your brush a little bit, especially if you're putting the varnish over something really big that takes up some time. Because when it dries, it's kind of like a clear coat of nail polish almost. It's got it solidifies to this sort of crusty sort of color, this crusty sort of feel and all that, even more so than just regular acrylic paint. So if it dries on your brush, it will kind of gum up your brush quite a bit. So if you just use an old nasty brush on this on this varnish, then you're not really worried about ruining your brush, are you? Okay. Make sure you really get the side here, the sides of the base. Ooh, getting out of frame there. Sorry. Make sure you do get around the sides of the base here, because that's where it's going to get handled the most, and that's where the paint can come off the most easily. Okay. But I think that's pretty much it. I think we've got that down there. Okay. Tell you what, I'm going to let him dry, and I will be right back. Alright, so after we've got the varnish mostly dried there, we're going to move on to the little itty-bitty details that really make Quan Chi, Quan Chi. Now this is when we're getting into the brave part, so this is when you're going to want to be careful. But we're moving on to this game colors color here. This is NEGRO black. The reason why we actually want to use the varnish before using this is because this, I think it's just this brand. I don't think it's the color. I think it's just the brand. It has a little tiny bit of a glossy kind of look to it, and I kind of want to use that for what we're going to do here. We're going to go over the sort of eyeliner and I guess lipstick. I don't know what it is that he's got of his color here. We're going to be using our little itty bitty tiny micro detailed brush here. It's so tiny it barely even shows up. Yeah, it's itty bitty. Okay, so we're going to be using this, and we're just going to really lightly go over first his mouth, because again, he's got these sort of black lips, and yeah, you want these to shine because you know his lips are gonna shine just a little bit. Just be very careful when you do it. There we go. He's got kind of black lips there. Okay, and then this is going to be kind of the tricky part too. He's got this sort of eyeliner. Just very lightly go around the white of his eyes. There we go. Just barely. There we go. That'll work. Okay. We'll go over sort of top of his eyes here, sort of eyebrows. Okay, and after you get that, the next thing that you want to do is he's got these sort of lines coming from the tops of his eyes that kind of go all the way around the back of his head. They don't quite go all the way around, so we're just going to kind of stop at the sort of top of his head there. Yeah, we're going to do that. Alright, now the next thing that we're going to do is kind of get tricky here. He's also got these sort of red tattoos that are going in between those little black lines there. So we're going to take this this blood red, I think it's blood red. Or is this fire red? This is fire red, I want blood red. Okay, so we're going to take this blood red color here. And you don't need very much paint here either. So we're just going to get that out there. And once again, you're going to use your itty-bitty micro-detailed brush here. Now, I know that he's got specific designs to those sort of runes or tattoos across his forehead, but we're not going to get super detailed or anything like that. We're just kind of sort of make little itty-bitty lines and kind of symbols and things like that to just kind of show that we are acknowledging that they're there. But I think we're working with too fine of details here to really kind of matter. I'm going to start with this sort of circle here. I'm just going to go up with a single line. And again, they don't need to be exact replications of the symbols, but if you get the general sort of feel across by just kind of having these little tiny lines and dots and that kind of thing, I think that it's going to become pretty clear what you're doing. There we go. I think that's pretty much it. So there you go, guys. That's Quan Chi from the new Mortal Kombat game. Well, I guess Quan Chi from Mortal Kombat in general. Now, yeah, he does technically have those sort of red runes going across his arms, but, I mean, this mini has the sleeves on here. Obviously, it's going to be hard to find a mini that is exactly representative of the thing that you're trying to emulate here. And you can kind of go over these details kind of on his trousers here, but I kind of just like the simplistic black design, and I think that the details on his face and everything like that kind of define it. But yeah, that's Quan Chi. Alright, thank you everybody for watching. If you want me to paint any other types of minis or anything, let me know in the comments below. If you want me to change up the format of the videos or anything like that, also let me know in those comments. But I appreciate you guys for watching. See you next time.